Hello again and welcome to Stage 2, which is another way of saying welcome to Stoke, a familiar haunt for the Tour of Britain featuring a violently difficult uphill finish. Now, Edvald Boasson-Hagen used to eat these for breakfast. How will the gorilla fare after yesterday's exertions?
It all got underway in miserable conditions in Rochdale. Team Sky, represented by Brad Wiggins, and of course Russ Downing, who took the first sprint of the day. Then eventually three men got away, Wout Poels, Richie Porte and endurer's Jack Bauer. Together they built a 5-minute lead before Bauer dropped off, and with 20k to go, it all came back together. In the final 8k then, Andre Greipel punctured, but by the time the finish line came close in Blackpool, he got himself right back in the frame.
Belletti looks as though he might get it, but on the right, Greipel takes it with consummate ease right on the line. Belletti second and Henderson of Sky finishing third.
Yeah, there we have it. Filthy, dirty and as wet as a wet weekend in Blackpool. Indeed it was. Dean Downing. Actually, you were saying if you weren't involved in that breakaway or chasing it down, it was a relative day off, wasn't it, in the saddle?
Yeah, the peloton had quite an easy day. I spoke to a few of the riders last night, and if you weren't in the breakaway, you were in the peloton. It was a little bit wet, but a relatively easy day in the peloton yesterday, sat in the wheels.
Now, we saw Jack Bauer, of course, involved in that break yesterday, but he showed quite how difficult it is for the domestic teams to compete against the likes of Sky, Garmin and Columbia if they're riding it as seriously as they seem to be.
Yeah, the profile's gone up so much in this Tour of Britain over the years that it's hard for the domestic teams to get anything out of it. So they'll all be looking to get in breakaways. Maybe today's a little bit of an undulating stage, a few hills, so they'll be hoping to get in the breakaways and put their team sponsors on television.
Is it realistic that they can actually win a stage, any of these guys?
I think so, yeah. If they get the right breakaway, if the GC sorts itself out early, then they may let the lesser riders go up the road, and hopefully some domestic teams will get in the breakaways and get a stage win out of it.
Well, we've let you have a little bit of
Some
glory today,
yeah.
haven't we, Dean?
Yep.
Watch this. This is Dean Downing's extremely informative, idiot-proof guide to what is what in the world of Lycra.
Jersey-wise then, here's how it stacks up.
If you watch the Tour de France, then most of this will be as familiar to you as a Mark Cavendish stage win.
First up is the sprinter's jersey. This goes to the rider with the highest number of points accrued in the intermediate sprints.
But here's the difference. There are no points on offer at the finish line.
Then there's the King of the Mountains.
Worn here improbably by Dean Downing. The summit of the categorised climbs each carry varying amounts of points. The prostate cancer charity points classification rewards high placings on stages.
The top 15 places in the final stage result carry points. It's all about consistency.
And finally, the Bikeability yellow jersey is reserved for the race leader.
That's the rider in the end who makes it from Rochdale to London in the least time.
Well, that was very good, Dean. You enjoy that?
Yeah, I like being in the yellow jersey, and nice chance to be in the yellow
you
jersey.
like being
for
in the
once.
yellow jersey, do you?
Yeah,
Okay.
well, you know.
It's interesting to see you in the King of the Mountains jersey as well. That
Yeah,
didn't
I'm
look right.
I'm not normally one of those either, so.
Dino, there's a few. Talking about King of the Mountains, on today's profile, there's 2 Cat 1 climbs, including Gun Hill, which is a beast, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a short, sharp, steep climb. I've not done it myself, but I know a few riders have wrecked it in our team, so that should be interesting. But it's quite far out from the finish. Probably, I think it's 60 k's from the finish, so that's probably not going to be too prominent in the overall result.
So we'd expect today all to be about that final ramp, 500 metres uphill to the finish line.
Yeah, it's a long kick up to the finish, and it just gets harder and harder. So everybody, especially the fast sprinters, are going to have to gauge their effort perfectly.
It's not a climb in that sense that it doesn't suit a climber, so the sprinters, if they get it right, can win this stage.
They can indeed, yeah, but also your other types of riders will be hot on the wheels of the sprinters, and if the sprinters don't get it right, then they'll be pouncing on for the victory. But it's not a climb in a sense, no.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes today's stage thoroughly unpredictable and opens the door for all sorts of riders to win today's stage.
And this is why. Stoke to Stoke isn't as simple as it might seem on paper or on the map. All right, it starts flat enough, but then a rat-a-tat-tat of 3 successive climbs, some of them pretty extreme, before it flattens out again, all in time for that uphill kick into Stoke. 160k, probably about 4 hours in the saddle. OK, pay attention. Exactly 100 years ago, 6 towns came together to form what we flippantly call Stoke-on-Trent. Remember that, you'll be tested later. It's a cycling city, no doubt about it. 150 kilometres of track, which is nice. We're in the potteries, of course. The old industry is still alive and still proud of its past. All the big names represented, but none bigger in Stoke than Sir Stanley Matthews. Out of town, the surrounding hills aren't bad either, even if, frankly, this kind of riding isn't going to get you a stage win.
Right, the talking is done. It's cleats on the pedals time. Let's get the race underway with Hugh Porter and Graham Jones.
Well, this is the start of stage 2. They're rolling out of Burslem. Ahead of them, 100 very tough miles indeed. Now then, we were here last year with this loop, although it's been increased slightly, and I know it's been made a lot harder. I was talking to the manager of the Rafa Conda Sharp team, John Herity, and he said this could be one of the defining selection stages. What do you think, Graham?
Yes, definitely. I think this is the first of 3 very tough stages coming up, and I certainly think there'll be some sort of selection today. It's a tough course. It's similar to the route we had last year, but I've had it a little bit extra in, a route that goes closer to towards Buxton, and we've got the extra climb of Holland's Clough.
Well, they're all happy at the moment. This is Greg Henderson from New Zealand.
Morning, how are you? Good, mate. What's that bright thing in the sky? I don't know, mate. What is that?
I think what he's saying is this is fantastic. The sun is shining after the rain they had to put up with yesterday. And of course, let's not forget that Henderson was third yesterday, and Andre Greipel, he's the overall leader of the race, a brilliant sprinter, but I think today he could be in trouble with the climbs.
Yes, I think he's going to struggle a bit over the next 3 days, and I'd be very surprised to see him in the top placings for today's stage.
Well, let me tell you that the first sprint of the day, that comes in Stone. It comes after only 14 miles of racing, and with the wind it's favourable. They're already getting down to it, and I can tell you they're moving well.
Yes, it's a familiar thing with the Tour of Britain these days. We get very little of dull racing, and sort of see the peloton just ambling along, so it's always been good racing.
Now the roads all around here, Stone, Leek, Buxton, up in the Peak District, are heavy. Believe me, ignore the categorised climbs and just think of the corrugations along the way. They test the legs and sap the strength.
Yeah, we're already seeing the riders attacking here right from the very early kilometres.
And it's Columbia trying to go away there. It looked like a rider from Vacances-Soleil trying to go with him, and I think this kind of stage is going to lend itself to continuous attacks. Yes, we've got a brace of riders, but they're only a tad clear, and there's a reaction coming immediately at the head of the field.
Yeah, I can also see there at the back of the peloton, Ed Clancy just sitting at the back. It's probably not a day he's looking forward to.
No, but Clancy had a very good day yesterday. The opening stage, he finished 8th, and for a track rider, that's a brilliant performance. Now then, riders trying to come across here. This is an interesting development, and very early in the stage.
Yeah, 1 or 2 riders trying to get across, a few splintered off the front of the peloton, a little bit of 1s and 2s, and it's certainly going to be a fast stage, I'm sure.
Well, most of the riders that started stage 1 are actually in touch to take yellow, so they've all got plenty to play for.
Yep, they have, and I think coming up to this first sprint, it'll also be interesting to see who's going to contest the sprint and start looking for seconds.
Absolutely right. Now, today's stage, of course, could suit somebody like Dan Martin, who won the Tour of Poland, and he's a very good climber. Now, that little group looks to me to be starting to go clear.
Yeah, just a few seconds, just a handful of metres over the peloton, but it looks like the gap is opening now.
Well, it's hardly a breakaway group, it's more a split, isn't it? There must be about 20 riders involved in this.
Yeah, and that's always dangerous when it's a decent-sized group, but also sometimes the group can get a little bit too large, and it can be uncoordinated with the work at the front.
Maybe we can pick out 1 or 2 of the stars in here. This looks like Geraint Thomas. It is Geraint Thomas on the front, the national champion now. Sky have got a lot to prove here, and they would dearly love to win this. And Richie Porte has read this move well. He's third back, and he's riding in the jersey as leader in the intermediate sprint competition.
Yeah, it's Dan Craven as well from Rafa Condor Sharp, and he's just going through, and it looks like this group is getting its head down. You see the gap already opening.
Certainly is. 20, about 20 I reckon, that's what we've counted. And you did make a good point earlier. What could happen in a group that size? We could get 1 or 2 passengers who will be sitting in, and that could disrupt the rhythm. But at the moment, they all look very keen to get on with it, because back to what I was saying, the fact that most of the field are in touch for yellow, they're all keen, aren't they? And also I saw Bradley Wiggins going through there. So Sky 2 I've seen, and he's a third. Greg Henderson. No, that's Bradley Wiggins. The earlier one was Greg Henderson. So great move by Sky.
Very strong 3 riders in this group. It's going to be very interesting to see who actually tries to chase this down.
Well, 1 kilometre to go to the first in the intermediate sprints. Now, on the line, there are bonuses. 3 for first, 2 for second, 1 for third. So, there's a lot to be gained here. And due to the quality and class of the field here, the odd second can make so much difference. So, let's get a look here and see who is in the shake-up then for the first position. I can see on the inside one of the Sky riders trying to get nearer to the front. Can't see Geraint Thomas from here, the national champion. So, Sky may well be trying to set this up for a lead out for Greg Henderson, because the Kiwi is a very strong finisher.
He is, and I mean, normally you wouldn't expect Greg Henderson to probably do well on a stage like this today, a really hilly stage, but as this group so far has formed on the flat, which is something you don't always expect, you expected to see all down to the climbers and all the action on the climbs.
Well, he actually started the stage in third place, as I mentioned earlier, 9 seconds behind the leader, Greipel, but he's missed the move. Now then, look at this. It was a Sky rider going over the line first. Long-rangey figure confirmed, Greg Henderson. 5 points, forget the points, he's got the 3 seconds. That is going to be very, very useful indeed. He's narrowed the gap, and in fact, on the road, he's now actually the leader of the Tour of Britain, because, as I said, Greipel is back in the peloton. Wow, what a stage we've got here beginning to unfold. Let's take a break. Welcome back to stage 2 of the Tour of Britain. It's a 100-mile loop based on Stoke today, and the 18 riders are now almost 4 minutes ahead of the rest of the field, and they covered 27 miles in the first hour. So this race is in an angry mood.
Yes, it's a very strong looking group now. We've got 3 riders from Vacances also in this group, and along with 3 from Team Sky, this is going to take a lot of catching.
And I can tell you one of the riders from Vacances is Johnny Hogeland, a Dutchman who's a brilliant climber. He won the King of the Mountains in the Tour of Poland. But Sky also going strongly here. They've got 3 riders. Greg Henderson, who we've already seen because he's won the bonus for the sprint in Stone. And Bradley Wiggins is there. And of course, the British champion, Geraint Thomas. So that is a very, very strong development.
It is, and we're now actually in the hills on the first climb up Ramshorn. It's a climb that we used last year as well. I have moved the King of the Mountains line a little bit further up the climb. It does dip down in the middle, and it drags on up to the finish.
So we'll watch out for that. There's a little kick near the top. So Ramshorn is a second category affair, and it carries 6 points for the first over, down to 1. Now then, there's Henderson looking good, and Richie Porte right in the wheel of Henderson. This man Porte, he's really a superb bike rider. He won the Young Riders competition in the Tour of Italy, and I must confess I hadn't heard of him before this year.
No, but he's certainly had a great year, and for me he's actually my favourite for the overall win, and especially being in this move today.
Well, that's a good tip from Graham Jones, a man who finished 20th himself in the Tour de France, and he's designed this course, and when it comes to stage races, there's not many people know more about them than Graham. Now, 1 or 2 other riders I can tell you about that have read the movies. We get a glimpse of Geraint Thomas near the back in the white jersey with the red and blue hoops. I can tell you that Christian Meyer's in this team from Garmin, and he's a good road racer. He's a former national road race champion of Canada. Travis Meyer from Garmin is in there, a Canadian who's a very good trackman. Heinrich Hausler, there's another name to look at from Cervelo, Graham. Second in Milan-San Remo, second in Tour de Flanders last year. Has had surgery on his knee, but he's starting to get back to some good form. So Hausler's another danger man.
Yes, he is. He's an excellent rider. But one interesting absentee from this breakaway is Dan Martin. I would have expected to have seen him in this move.
Yeah, and today's stage is a perfect stage for Dan Martin because he's a brilliant climber, but his namesake, Tony Martin, the German on the Columbia team, is there, and he's a talented man as well, winner of the Eneco Tour this year. And as we look at the head of the breakaways, Bradley Wiggins with that lovely, relaxed, rhythmic style. He is a prodigious talent, a 3 times winner of a gold medal in the Olympic Games. And Wiggins, well, he's out to try and prove something here.
He is. I believe he's been looking forward to the Tour of Britain, and he certainly looks very comfortable on the front of that group.
So Wiggins it is, just tapping out the rhythm rhythmically at the front as it thins out into a long line. And third back, he's still Richie Porte. Looks pretty good. Now, Porte has got a chance here of becoming the leader in the King of the Mountains on the road because he started today 3 points behind the leader, Wouter Poels, who pulled on that jersey after day 1 in Blackpool, but Poels has missed the move. So he's got a very good chance here of becoming the King of the Mountains leader after this ascent.
Yeah, well, certainly these climbs come, once we do get on this climb, there are 3 climbs all fairly close together.
With a breakaway as big as this, Graham, really, thinking back to the peloton, who's going to organise a chase?
Well, that's the difficult thing. You know, it's whether some of these teams behind now really think they've got a chance of getting up there overall, so they may have given up the ghost. But there's still Ampost, obviously one team who's been trying to do a little bit of the work at the head of the peloton.
Would you think Garmin are happy with this? I mean, you've just mentioned that Dan Martin's missed the move.
Well, yeah, you have to think so, but they've got Christian Meyer there, so they are represented in the front, and also Travis Meyer, so they've got 2 in the breakaway, so it's not one for them to chase down.
No, and of course they've got Albacini as well, the Swiss man. He's another good bike rider, very good stage race performer.
Yeah, and we're just seeing the group working fairly well together. Also Rob Partridge there from Endura in this group.
Yeah, and he'll be going to the Commonwealth Games to represent Wales in New Delhi. Partridge, who competed actually in the previous Commonwealth Games in Melbourne. Another member of the group here as well. That's the way to keep up with the race, isn't it?
It is.
It's one of those fills of transport.
Certainly easier than pedalling along, isn't it?
You're right there. Now look, here's the attack beginning to unfold here, and he's from the Vacon Soleil rider, and I tell you, this is Johnny Hugeland. And Hugeland, remember I mentioned, I think a little earlier, he won the King of the Mountains in the Tour of Poland, so this move doesn't surprise me. He's a very talented bike rider.
Certainly nobody has been able to follow him there, so he's opened a good gap over the others.
Yeah, he gets the points for first, that's 6. Now I'm just keen to see where Richie Porte got. I think he was either there it is, 3rd. Now I can tell you that 3rd place for Porte gives him 4 points, and it means now he's the leader of the King of the Mountains on the road by 1 point.
Well, this is one of those days, and if he certainly carries on and picks up more points, it's probably going to be very difficult to get that jersey off his shoulders.
It was interesting to see the other places as well. Geraint Thomas has obviously got the good legs on today. Patrick Sinkovic was in the shake-up, and Greg Henderson. Still a long way to go, but already the signs are beginning to unfurl here that we are in for a real sort-out day.
We certainly are, and also to bear in mind today is the fact that once we've gone over this climb, we spend probably 20-30 kilometres just going over the Staffordshire Moor, so it's going to be a really tough stage.
So the pattern here of the competition is indicative of the territory, and looking down there at the peloton, nobody seems to want to try and apply pressure at the front, and this is going to play very nicely into the hands of the leaders.
Well, I think you could see the signs there that the peloton are just really riding up this climb at tempo with no real riders getting dropped on this climb, and normally if they were going at a high speed you would expect to see a few riders off the back.
And the time of advantage is yo-yoing, and that means there's still a little bit of activity at the front of the peloton, but I cannot see them being able to bridge.
No, it's still a long way to go, you never know. I mean, you might start seeing the riders in the front not cooperating at some time, but it is a bit of a long shot, I think.
And you see, with most teams having representation in this front group, trying to limit the gains is very, very difficult. 2 riders then from the Columbia team near the front here. That was Tony Martin, and a little bit further back, Michael Albacini, Swiss rider who was brought in actually as a late replacement for Team Columbia. And now it's Vacon Soleil just taking on the pace setting, and then followed through by one of the riders here from Skill. And it's interesting to see, there they are, that's the peloton, and it's 3:26 actually, and there's no sense of urgency here at the front of the main field.
No, you can see that as the peloton went across the line, they're all pretty much spread across the road. That's not something you would expect to see if the peloton was really trying hard.
Almost pedestrian pace, wasn't it? So I suppose what we must look at here is when we approach the next climbs, when the pressure is applied, this group might fragment and a little group going away from it.
Well, there is that also, but what you tend to get in a group like this now, we'll probably take the next climb fairly much at tempo, because again, although we've got these 2 climbs including Gun Hill, it is still quite a long way to the finish really from Gun Hill.
Yeah, and obviously that gives an opportunity for the field behind to close down. Still a lot more to come. Welcome back, and we're at the midway point of this second stage, and ahead of them are the 2 tough climbs, and the first of those is Hollingsclough Moor, a first category ascent, and then almost off the back of it actually is the fearful Gun Hill.
Yes, it's a familiar climb in cycling history. A lot of races have been run over that climb over the years, and also Hollingsclough Moor's a little closer to home for me. It's my old training road, so it's roads that I know very well.
And that's why you've put them into this stage, no doubt, Graham. There it is, the start then of this climb we've just talked about, Hollingsclough Moor. It's quite a long one, and let me tell you that riders, enthusiasts that want to tackle the stage for the prostate cancer charity ride will be riding this, because that cancer charity ride is over this stage, and that takes place on the 26th of September. You can get details actually on the Tour Ride website. You've got to be tough to tackle that.
You have, and it's 100 miles as well, so you want to be coming into this with a reasonable condition if you're going to do it.
I don't think I would be doing it, believe me. Now then, 2 riders, it looks to me from this shot, trying to go away here, and of course the severity of these 2 climbs is the opportunity probably for a little break to form off the front. Richie Porte, you can see on the right, he does look comfortable. He's possibly one of the men that could cause some danger here.
He is, and that actually on the steeper part of the climb at the moment, the steepest part is early on in the climb, and the last couple of kilometres tend to ease off a little bit.
So much to gain today. Approximately 35 miles from the summit of the final climb to the finish, so quite a bit of regrouping could actually take place, but with the yellow jersey way back now out of contention, the jersey is going to move onto the shoulders definitely of one of the strong men here. Now right at the front it's the pro of Cervelo. I think that might be Hausler actually.
It is, and he's looking quite strong, as though he's recovered well from his injuries.
He has. That surgery he underwent in the middle of the summer, now behind him. But look at Wiggins, he does look very, very relaxed today, doesn't he? He's got the good legs on, and this, of course, development for him is perfect, because he'll probably be playing a team role here for Henderson, the sprinter.
Yeah, we've just seen the peloton now going through the village of Longnor, just before they start the climb of Hollingsclough Moor.
Narrow, isn't it? Very picturesque, and good crowds have turned out once again. We had massive crowds yesterday despite the weather in the Trough of Bowland, and the crowds today are equaling those of stage 1.
Yeah, nice, so probably bigger crowds today. I mean, being a Sunday and the sun's out, it makes a big difference.
And they certainly love a bike race up here, don't they? Remember, the great Les West comes from this area, twice the winner of the Milk Race, the man who got a silver in the World Amateur Road Championships, and of course Gun Hill was his favourite course.
A great shot of the leading group there, just all in one long line. They are actually heading into a very strong headwind on this climb, so it's going to be very difficult if anybody is even thinking of attacking, trying to get away on this bit.
So after the opening miles, where they were averaging something like 27 miles per hour, it's swung round now, as Graham says, and they're facing the headwind. And in actual fact, it's nice, isn't it, because it'll slow the climbers down a little bit.
It will, and but as soon as you get to the top of this climb, you've got a couple of kilometres of not real descent, but sort of roads that go up and down, and then you do a left turn, and you go literally going right across the moor with a strong wind from the right hand side.
So it's a perfect stage this, and there's still a lot more to come. I'm waiting for one of these riders to show their hands on this climb. Hoogeland, as we've mentioned already, a very good man on the hills, and so is Richie Porte. Now for these two, they ought to try and attack here to try and thin the break down a little bit. There's still too many riders to my liking in this breakaway bunch.
As the peloton there just starting the climb of Hollingsclough Moor, and look at the gap now, 8 minutes 17 seconds.
8 minutes 17, that is staggering, and that underlines our comment, doesn't it, that the pedestrian pace at the front of the main field has enabled the leading group to go away. And this is Hugeland beginning to gather himself, ready for the sprint over the concluding metres here to get the maximum points at the top of this first category affair. And going with him is Richie Porte. Yep, first over the top was Hugeland, the Dutchman. Here he comes.
Yeah, they've opened a little bit of a gap over the remainder of that group, but I certainly don't think they'll be interested in carrying on, just the two of them.
He's
Still a
quite
long way.
keen though, isn't he? Look, he's gesticulating. Oh, hello, we're all friends. A nice handshake.
I think they're just saying, you know, fair sprint there.
Yeah, but what's happened there is Hugeland's picked up 10 points, as you can see, but Port's got 8, and Hugeland didn't win any points on day one, so Richie at the moment is reinforcing his stranglehold here on the King of the Mountains.
He is. We've just seen and even more relaxed riding from the peloton.
Here are the remnants of the break. I say remnants, but of course Hugeland and Richie Porte are just ahead. There they are. In fact, they've eased back, and we're all going to come back together. So it's 18 riders now approaching the final climb, and that's going to be Gun Hill.
It is, and also there is a very, very fast descent. It's one of a descent I can remember from my days of training around here. It's a fairly frightening descent down towards Leek before the right turn towards Gun Hill. They would touch, I would guess, approaching 90 kilometres an hour.
No wonder you are such a strong stage race rider if you train in country like this, Graham. Now then, what about the Sky colours? They're wearing a green band, aren't they? What is the significance of that?
I was talking to Fran Miller. I think we mentioned yesterday that about the change of kit, and I believe that they can change their kit once per year. And this is an initiative to sort of help the rainforests of Brazil, and they're riding this green and black jersey, which are going to be auctioned off after the race.
Wow, fantastic. As opposed, of course, to the black and the pale blue. And I must admit, it looks very, very good.
Yeah, actually, I prefer it.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind one of those jerseys. I shall put a bid in at the auction. Now then, we're looking at the back of the field here. And this is one of the Garmin riders. As we get back to the head of the peloton. And they are getting some support for the roadside, but I just wonder what's going through their minds when they get told that they're 8.5 minutes back.
Yeah, it's difficult when you're in a peloton like this, and virtually the racing is over, and it's just a case of wanting to get to the finish, really.
What do they call it at the back? Gruppetto?
Yeah, it's a bit more than a gruppetto. It's still the peloton, really, or is this a breakaway? I don't think there is any real gruppetto today.
The field, of course, are resigned to the challenge of sprinting for 19th place should these 18 stay clear. And at the back, it's Christian Meyer, the Canadian, who rides on the Garmin team. He's at the back of that leading group.
Yeah, but still, despite the sunny weather at the start, we have still had 1 or 2 showers on the day, and as you can see there, the roads are still a little bit wet in places.
1 or 2 of the teams that have missed the move today. Motor Point Marshall's passed. They've got no representation. There's nobody from the Island team. Team Rally, they haven't made it either. That's just to name 3 of the squads.
Yeah, it is very difficult when you're riding a domestic calendar, really, to sort of come into this race and be able to compete. It is very, very, very hard.
A little bit of evidence of a shower that we've had earlier on. So on 1 or 2 of the corners, riders will need to be vigilant, although the roads are drying out.
Yes, I don't think it's going to be a problem that the bright skies. There were only light showers that I saw.
There's the field, just crossing the line then at the summit of Hollingsworth Moor. There's nothing for them to gain, and it's just a matter of just promenading to the finish. Save your strength, ready for tomorrow.
Yeah, there's a lot of days to come. Yeah, I mean there will be quite a few of the known sprinters in that peloton, and they've got their day will probably come in the last 3 days.
That's Borat Bozic of the Vacan Soleil team as we cross the sign that tells us we're now approaching the climb of Gun Hill.
Yeah, tough climb. Usually always good crowds that come to Gun Hill. I remember last year it was actually almost difficult to get through at first when I came through.
Yes, I remember it well. It was a corridor of faces, wasn't it? And there was a cacophony of applause behind the riders as they swept over the top. And I am actually being told there are similar crowds today on the top. They love to watch the pain.
They do, and they come from quite a long way around, and we've got quite a lot of catchment areas of real cycling hotbeds. So you will see a lot of people come from Sheffield, Manchester, and Stoke itself.
It's a famous ascent, isn't it? I must admit, it is very, very hard. I've raced this myself, and I feel sure you have.
I only ever raced on it once, actually. I think I remember. I think we did a circuit in a Sea-Link a long time ago.
Oh, really?
But it's I think the old races, the pro races, used to do about 10 laps, if I remember rightly.
Well, I don't quite remember how many laps, but when the old PCA, the Professional Cycling Association, was around, that was one of the famous classics up here, the Gun Hill Circuit race. And of course, there's no prizes for guessing who always used to win it. That was Les West. Now then, we've got a lone attack on here. One of the riders trying to go away. It's Richie Port. Now then, this Aussie is full of riding. Now, Richie Port is going very strong. He was third over the first climb, second over the second one. That's Hollingsclough Moor. And now he's taken flight.
Yeah, this looks a little bit more serious than just going for points. I think he's actually trying to attack.
Now he sprouted wings then, this 25-year-old Australian. He's light in physique, so that's very good for dancing your way to the summit of a steep climb.
Yep, and Peter Hoogerland, I think it is, it's trying to close the gap behind. He's not really opened a gap at the moment, but it remains to be seen whether anybody does try to attack as we approach the summit.
But this is a positive move, and it could prove to be fruitful here then for Richie Port. If he crosses the top of the climb first, he's going to get 10 very useful points. No surprise to me if it is Hoogerland pulling the rest along, because we've already mentioned that he is a very good climber as well. But it's caused a problem here, Graham. One or two riders are finding the pace hot, and they've fallen back a little bit.
They are, and I think Richie Port, although he's continuing his effort here, really could do with a little bit of help if he's any thoughts of trying to go all the way to the finish.
He has a lovely economical style, doesn't look stressed at all. He just gets out of the saddle occasionally just to stretch the legs, then drops down and finds the rhythm again. But here he's forced to pound his way out of the saddle towards the top, but that underlines my earlier comment. Just look at the crowd, massive crowd here, giving the Tour of Britain full support.
Yeah, it's a really good crowd, and Richie Port just having a look back there. I think he knows that probably the King of the Mountains points are safe, but he's just looking to see if there's anybody coming up to give him some support.
Yep, there it is, the top. And it's going to be Port that will take the 10. Cracking little move here then by this Australian. And he figures in all the classifications. He's not just a climber, he gets in the mix at the end as well. And he's been involved, of course, in the intermediate sprint competition. That's why he's wearing the leader's jersey. These are the closing meters now of the ascent of Gun Hill. And you can tick off first to the top. Richie Port, 10 points are going to be his. A lovely control ride. He took off at the right moment, throws a cursory glance back over that right shoulder to see if anyone is going to bridge to him, but he's got a handsome lead here, and that's the way to attack a climb.
It is. I'll be interested to see just what he does over the top of this climb, whether he continues his effort and hope that some riders come up to him to give him a hand. You can just see just how windy it is with the trees blowing there.
I think to try and stay away on your own is too ambitious, isn't it? He's 34 miles to go, so he needs some company. Here's the summit. Port's over the top first. And a lovely, generous round of applause to welcome the Aussie. Now then, we just need to see who's second and whether or not a little group is forming behind, because that would be the correct scenario for Port. There they are. That group has broken up significantly. A little bit of a sprint developing there for the second place.
It looks like a rider from Stoke-on-Trent, so I'm assuming that might be Hoogerland who's gone over in second. And
good
it
spot.
Is,
yeah, it is. Hoogerland second. Another 8 points for him. So these are now becoming the key players in the King of the Mountains competition. But it is Richie Port that we'll welcome on the podium down in Handley at the presentations, because he's amassed a handsome lead and he becomes the new King of the Mountains on stage 2 here around Stoke.
Welcome back at the second intermediate sprint at Leek. Richie Port still clear after his attack on Gun Hill swept up the points. And then at Wedgwood, the third and final sprint of the day, Port was back in the fold, and the leaders were together with Vacansoleil's Michael Golas and Heinrich Hausler of Cervelo just off the front and getting the 1-2. As we join the action, there are 15 leaders all together.
They're in the outskirts of Stoke-on-Trent, so there's not far to go now for this leading group. And here is the peloton, and I can tell you they're more than 5 kilometres behind.
Well, that puts it into context, really. It makes it sound a lot bigger gap than it actually is.
And I can tell you the 3 riders that have lost contact with that leading group, Tony Martin of the Columbia team, the German, very talented rider. I'm quite surprised that he's lost contact. And the two Italians on the Colnago team, that's Canuti and Brambilla. So that now gives us the composition of the leading group, 15 strong. Sky obviously have got on their minds a stage victory here, and it's the national champion of Great Britain, Geraint Thomas, doing the pace setting at the front, and he's getting a hefty hand also from Bradley Wiggins.
Yeah, well, they're just trying to keep the pace high here, trying to stop other people attacking, and it's quite a difficult finish. It's the same finish we've used for the last 2 years, but with 2 kilometres to go, there is a very, very long drag up to the kilometres to go flag.
And that's where an endurance rider has got his time, his effort to perfection. 4 kilometres to go now then, Graham.
Yeah, and Bradley Wiggins in second place there. I'm just wondering whether he's just there to launch an attack, or whether they're actually looking to prepare the stage for Greg Henderson.
Well, I tell you what, Bradley Wiggins will know plenty about 4 kilometres, because that is his discipline. He, of course, has been world champion and Olympic champion for that. So you could almost think about Wiggins going on the front and just winding the pace up. But Thomas and Wiggins are actually 50% of the British team that won the gold medal in Beijing in a world and Olympic record.
Yeah, very strong riders. They know each other very well.
And with these two setting the pace, relaying each other, it's going to be extremely difficult for anybody else to try and come round.
Yeah, but I think when we get onto this drag up to the kilometre flag, I do think we'll see somebody try to make a move and not just wait for the sprint.
And of course, the man from Sky that's going to profit from this is Greg Henderson, the Kiwi, because he is a very, very fast finisher, a brilliant track rider. He's been a world champion on the track and a Commonwealth Games gold medalist. So he is certainly going to profit then from the work being done here by Thomas and Wiggins. And of course, it's all about timing your effort. Now, these are endurance riders, but they've got to keep the pace high, not expend too much, and try, of course, to keep it uncomfortable for the rest so that Henderson can launch his attack.
Yeah, but he's got to have to wait until the last minute. It is a really tough climb. As I said, it climbs up to a kilometre, drops down a little bit, then you've got a fairly sharp right-hand bend with about 400 metres to go, and it drags all the way up to the line. It's a tough finish.
Well, this is the 3rd time that we will have finished here in Hanley, right outside the town hall, and the last 2 times we've been here, it was a brilliant, powerful sprinting then of the Norwegian Edvald Bosenhagen that was across the line first, but of course he's not here, so we're going to get a different name on the honours board after this one. Now, another man they'll need to keep an eye on here is the Australian stroke German. He's a dual passport holder, Heinrich Hausler of the Cervelo team, and Hausler's pretty powerful as well, and he's just lying in the wheels, and it looks like Geraint Thomas has swung off. So Thomas now has given his all, and now it's down to Bradley Wiggins to keep the pace high.
Yeah, he's still got a tough little bit to do. They've obviously left it for Bradley to do the drag up to the kilometre to go, and Geraint Thomas will probably just roll into the finish.
Not a bad teammate to have as a domestique, is it, Bradley Wiggins, with all those medals in his trophy cabinet, and he's the man out of the saddle there, really trying to inject some pace to stop anybody else going by.
Well, it's certainly stop anybody trying to attack, I would think. If you're going to attack while Bradley's on the front on this sort of road, then you've got to be a strong rider. But what it also do will take the sting out of the other riders' legs.
Certainly will. And when you think they've been out there now for almost 100 miles, there must be a lot of fatigue lurking in those muscles. But it's still Wiggins pulling the rest along, and Hausler just caught a glimpse of about 4 or 5 back, so he's in a good position, and it is off that elbow of the bend where you've got to put the final kick in. Well, Wiggins has swung over. Well, he either thinks he's done enough or he's run out of power. What do you think, Graham?
I'm not so sure. It looks like he's got back to the front again now. There's nobody else decided to take up the pace, but it looks like there's an attack now on the right.
So it's the train on the right now that's beginning to go clear, and it looks like these 4 that have got a slender advantage as they set themselves up for the run for the line. And Richie Port is the man right at the head here. This Australian who has got 2 jerseys to collect in the presentation for the King of the Mountains and the intermediate sprint competition. Now then, can he possibly win the stage? The bonuses here will decide where the yellow jersey is going to go. It's going to be very tight.
Well, they've just got to the top of that drag now. They're inside the last kilometre. They've got about 400 metres of slightly downhill before the right turn and the uphill.
So the Flamme Rouge pennant, there it is. They've gone under it. We're inside 1,000 metres to go, and there's an attack beginning to develop here from Travis Meyer of the Garmin team. They've got 2 riders in this group, Travis Meyer and Christian Meyer. So Garmin have committed themselves early here. Now the rest are tucking in behind and trying to use the pace to their advantage. But that injection of pace has not managed to develop a gap. The rest are all in contention. Well, 15 riders in the shake-up here. The yellow jersey is at stake on the line, and of course the prestigious stage victory here in Hanley. This is the first right-hander as they begin to thread their way now up the funnel that'll bring them to the line, and it's still Richie Port still at the front. The Australian beginning to turn the screw, but the rest are waiting. They're waiting just behind him to deliver the killer blow. Port's gone too early, I feel, and right behind him we've got Hausler, and also in the shake-up is Albacini, the Swiss rider who's on Columbia. Here they come, the concluding stages. It's very, very tight indeed, but Henderson is the man who looks as though he's going to take it. Henderson takes the left-hander. He's got about a 10-metre lead here, and the Kiwi for the Sky team celebrates. That victory gives him the stage, and the bonus of 10 seconds will put him in yellow. It'll go to count back, but I'm convinced that bonus puts Henderson of Sky in the yellow jersey here at the end of the stage in Handley. And here coming up to the line is Bradley Wiggins, and he'll hear the PA system announcing that Sky have won the stage. He'll be a happy man. Well, what a day's racing we've seen here. 100 tough miles, and believe me, Sky took the race by the scruff of the neck. And Greg Henderson, here he is then, the victory salute to cross the line, the winner of stage 2 in Hanley.
Henderson then powering up and over the line, taking Sky to the place where they always wanted to be, but at some cost, 160 kilometres, which felt a lot further.
You don't need 250 k's to ruin yourself. You can do it in 160 around here. That was a hard day, and I mean, hats off to the team at the finish there. You saw that they were just, 100% committed for me to have a go at the sprint, and gee, I tell you what, that last 300 metres is a long way.
Well, it's almost 10.5 minutes since Greg Henderson clinched the stage victory here in the heart of Hanley. The big crowd are still waiting for the arrival on the line of the main field, and here they are now, beginning to sort themselves out in the sprint to see who is going to be first at the head of the peloton. And it's Michel van Steen of Top Sport Flandrian who finishes 16th on the day. He'll be pleased with that finishing position, even though he is 10:40 back.
Henderson then took the win, the Kiwi enjoying the applause on behalf of the big British team. That's his 6th win of the season. He led home a group of 5, including Michael Albacini and Heinrich Hausler. Richie Port finished 3 seconds down. Messrs Wiggins and Thomas did their work, then dropped off in bits and pieces to finish 14th and 15th. This morning's yellow jersey crossed the line in the big pack. Andre Greipel back in 43rd place, and Tony Martin in the break for much of the day shot out the back and finished 95th. Richie Port took a leak, or rather took the sprint at Leek and retains the sprint jersey. And a 1st, 2nd and 3rd place for the Tasmanian on the 3 categorised climbs of the day puts him in the King of the Mountains jersey too. But the man in possession is Greg Henderson and Team Sky. Job done, the pressure off them, at least for now.
Box number 1 was get a stage win, and for the first couple of stages it looked like a parcours that would suit me, and I was consistent yesterday. I was close, but not quite close enough yesterday, and then I won today, and what comes with that is the yellow jersey, which is just it's a lovely bonus.
And this is how it looks after the shakedown in Stoke-on-Trent. Henderson has 14 seconds now on the tricky trio of HTC Columbia's sprinter Michael Albacini, Heinrich Hausler and Richie Port. Patrick Sinkovitz of ISD isn't far off at 18 seconds. Travis Meyer heads Garmin's challenge just 23 seconds off the pace. Well, we thought it might be decisive, and perhaps looking at that general classification, it has been for some riders who now see a serious gap opening up ahead of them. Dean Downing, I know I've sent you off ferreting amongst the team buses to find out what exactly went on today. What did you learn?
I spoke to Dan Craven, my teammate, and he said the breakaway went away so fast. It was a hard job. And at the finish, he was struggling a little bit cramped, so that proves that it was a hard day in the saddle and also very hard at the finish. But he got 10th on the stage, so that's a great job by Dan for the team.
Well done to him, but I suppose the moment that Sky managed to place Wiggins, Thomas and Henderson in that break, it was kind of game over for everyone else, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, half the team in the front break of 18 riders is fantastic, and not only fantastic is that they won the stage as well with Greg Henderson.
Yeah, it didn't all go totally smoothly for Sky today, incidentally. One of their team vehicles punctured. The other one came up to help him and take the bikes off the roof. And in the end, both their support vehicles, quite early on in the race,
ended up getting outside the rolling bubble. If anything had happened to Wiggins and Thomas and Henderson, it would have been game over. No replacement bike.
Yeah, I heard about the puncture on the road, but I didn't realise about the outside the bubble. So that could have spelled disaster if anything would have gone wrong with the 3 Sky riders in the breakaway. But gladly for them, it didn't, and they're in a good position now in the yellow jersey.
They're in a decent position, but there's 1 or 2 names there at 14 seconds, for example, Port and Hausler, and just ahead of him as well, that HTC Columbia rider, not a household name. Who is he?
He's Albertini. He's obviously with a HTC Columbia household name. He's not himself, but he's a very good sprinter. He's had a lot of placings in this season, so he'll have the full support of his HTC Columbia team to try and get the yellow jersey back.
And also, by the way, don't rule out a challenge from Garmin in the form of those 2 Meyer brothers. They're lurking at 23 seconds too. There's plenty still to play for as we head to Wales tomorrow, and a brutal finish in Swansea. Do be sure to join us there.
Morning, how are you?